Welcome to the 9th episode of the Phantom Punch podcast. I'm here with Kick of Movement Marshals. If you're here because of the thumbnail, we'll be talking about Ilia Topuria and how he lost all of his powers going through a divorce settlement and the grave implications it had on this particular fight. Tell us what you thought about this awesome performance by Justin Gaethje.
Thanks for having me on again. I loved the whole event, and this fight was obviously one of the best fights ever. It was incredible. Justin Gaethje truly had the performance of his life. Gaethje finally put all of the disparate elements of his game that he's shown flashes of together. When he does that, this guy could be one of the best in the world, but he always kind of floundered in a lot of fights. Even the Pimblett fight, he didn't look great. The one before this, which was crazy, the Oliveira fight, he floundered. He was able to utilize his durability, which doesn't seem to be affected by any of his recent knockouts, but finally put it together in a cohesive game with elements that work off of each other to make double and triple attacks that kind of confound the opponent. And after almost getting finished in the second round, put it on Topuria in a way that has never been put on him.
That's a good point about his disparate elements not coming together, and it does come together in this fight, mainly because of something we talked about, and probably every single analyst talks about, which was his jab. His jab really forced Topuria to use his reactive head movement. Topuria likes to shift his weight from lead foot to rear foot. When Justin came out with his jab, it almost confused Topuria. He wanted to do the inside slip. He wanted a calf kick off of it. It seemed to mess with his timing.
Definitely did. And the one thing, I almost tweeted it, but then Topuria started getting his ass beat. I was going to be, Topuria is really the most efficient calf kicker in MMA, where he lands pretty much every single one of them, and they all land with authority. If you watch film on Justin Gaethje, he has a great jab, but it's not going to come out until the third round, so we don't have to worry about it, which seems to be how Topuria kind of thought it might go down. And whether that was due to arrogance or just not expecting it or whatever else, it really did confound him. Topuria didn't look bad at all. In fact, the first round, even though Gaethje won it, was a pretty typical Topuria round where he's kind of feeling things out. Justin won, but it was still relatively competitive. Most of his first rounds, he might lose by a margin, but are relatively competitive. First round of the Volk fight was kind of weird and slow. The only one where he really put it on someone while still almost getting tuned a couple times was the Oliveira one, but it was a fairly typical Topuria first round. The only weird thing that he was doing, and he's done this in some other fights, but when he would retreat into his stance and keep a light lead foot, I'm wondering if that's because he was expecting the Gaethje calf kick, which didn't come out this fight. He would retreat into his stance and have his really light lead foot, and Gaethje would just eat him up with the jab, and that's actually the exact position he was in when he got dropped in the third round when Gaethje finally followed up with the right hand.
I wanted to talk about the calf kick a little bit. For Topuria, his calf kick is really good because he throws it in the right context. Volkanovski does that thing where he probes with his lead hand and then he strafes to his left with his lead foot bladed, and then Topuria will throw the calf kick off of that. Against Max, Topuria would throw the calf kick off the jab, I guess because he expected that Max would be the one jabbing in. But in this fight, the few calf kicks that I saw were almost leads.
He was leading with it, and they still landed with authority, but some of them weren't even thrown necessarily as hard. It was almost a tad more probing, and the timing was still there on them. I think inherently a little more reactive rather than being something that was taking advantage of the opponent's movement. It was almost in response to him having trouble with Gaethje's jab, which I think made it more of a defensive maneuver rather than an inherently offensive one that's taking advantage of the opponent's habits and not even weaknesses, like circling off. It wasn't taking advantage so much as him needing to come up with an answer for the question Justin was presenting him.
Shifting gears, let's talk about Justin. We've talked about his jab and how that brought his entire game together. He would threaten the single leg. It was almost like a trap hook dump, and it was something that Topuria really had to deal with.
Exactly. That's the other thing with Justin Gaethje. The Fiziev fights were really interesting in this way because Gaethje looked really good for the most part in both of them. His jab in the third round of both of those fights, he finally went for takedown attempts. That was always the thing with Gaethje. Oh, he's this D1 wrestler who never wrestles because he said he gets tired. The thing that was always going to make Gaethje's game a lot better was just introducing a takedown attempt that plays off of his other weapons. When you combine the jab, the takedown, that posting takedown attempt, the single collar tie that he likes to throw on, that's 3 weapons right there that all have relatively the same initiating movement. So it becomes a triple attack where the opponent doesn't really know what he's going to do. And the jab is quick. He'll throw the uppercut off the collar tie. Most of his offensive game was initiating that triple attack with the jab, the collar tie, and the takedown attempt. When he started doing that to Topuria, it's like, well, I don't know what exactly he's going to do when he steps forward with that movement of his shoulder.
The good thing about initiating that level change on Topuria specifically is that when Topuria is in the clinch, he doesn't seek initiative. His normal move in the clinch is just to break his posture and then try to just back out of it. I think that's a big reason why Justin had so much success in this fight. Whenever Justin was able to enter cleanly on collar ties and level changes, Topuria would bend at the waist, break his posture, and he'd be there for uppercuts.
As the fight wore on, you even saw Gaethje playing with the jab a little more as he got confidence with it. There was one sequence where he just threw his lead hand out there to put it in Topuria's face, which is very much an old-timey boxy thing, hampering their vision by putting your fist in their face and then throwing the uppercut underneath without even throwing the collar tie, which, again, because of Topuria's head movement, because of the way he exits clinches, he was marked for. It was just the perfect weapon, thankfully one that Justin Gaethje does really well, to counter what Topuria does. The other thing is both the Volkanovski and the Holloway fights, the knockout sequences, came as they were up against the fence, but also reaching for a collar tie. I think the main difference here was that Justin Gaethje's collar tie wasn't usually defensive as Topuria was pressuring him. At the very least, it wasn't purely defensive. Oh, I need to grab this collar tie to bring him in and get a moment of rest. Gaethje's was usually a lot more proactive. He's actually throwing things off of it. Topuria had to be, oh, I can't just push off and throw the left hook, which he still did sometimes, but he had to think a little more about it because he was getting eaten up with the uppercut. Everybody's talking about that one uppercut in the first round that I think obviously either broke or started to really bother his orbital when he started touching his eye, which was just a proactive uppercut as Topuria was coming in.
How that affected the fight is Topuria actually started leaning back, similar to what he did in the Max fight, where he would have his weight on the back foot looking to cross counter the jab. When you look at the first round, he was doing his regular, get his weight on the lead foot, threaten with the rear hand, and then try to back Justin up, which sort of worked well because he was looking to slip and cross counter. When he did get tagged with the uppercuts, he started leaning back. It seemed like he lost his confidence in what he normally does well, which is weird to say because he was still moving forward most of the fight. But at the end of the 4th round, because of those collar tie uppercuts and he was getting punched every time he slipped inside, he started to play in the middle of the cage.
The cross counter was working really well throughout near the end of the first round. That first half of the first round, it wasn't empty because it was still pressuring him. He obviously has just the inherent threat of his power, but it was just a lot more movement-based pressure without any actual threats. Those cross counters and everything after weren't really coming out near till the end of the round. Even though he was tagging Gaethje with the cross counter sometimes, his normal dip that he does to the outside was really good at diffusing that cross counter to an extent. You saw Topuria start to follow up with the hook in the second round and near the end of the first round. That could obviously catch him as he's doing that dip to his right side. Funnily enough, as Topuria likes to just kind of start the fight with establishing his rear hand threat, Gaethje's dip to his right side was almost perfectly poised to make it a lot harder to land that consistently.
Justin, his ability to dip to that side and not get punished for it against Topuria, who's obviously a way better striker than Paddy Pimblett. Paddy would actually catch him as he dipped, which was hilarious.
Yep.
In this fight, when Topuria tried to lead with his rear hand, it actually mitigated that threat, which was kind of funny to see. One of the things that Gaethje does when he jabs is jab off, go to his left side, and then he will dip his rear hand as he jabs. He would double it up and triple it up, so Topuria wouldn't have the opportunity to follow up. When Topuria did follow up, I think he found it a little bit too late, especially in the 4th round. He found out that he could hook off of that when Justin would jab.
Topuria did have a very impressive 4th round for the state that he was in. Great that he was able to see that. I'm not surprised that a fighter as schooled as Topuria, who's really good at finding his timing, finding his counters, was able to pull that out. By that point, when you're against as heavy a hitter as Justin Gaethje, you can't be coming to that so late.
To top things off, the thing about this performance is that even though he did do all the right things, mechanically, the habits that he has are still present, which actually makes this more impressive.
He still has goofy mechanics sometimes. But having a little bit of jank to your game can serve you really well. Gaethje, there's that clip of him talking about like striking in the half beats and just having slightly weird timing with his mechanics. It almost served him a little better in certain aspects to have 20-30% of jank to his game, because it just threw Topuria off.
This was more of the general stuff that we wanted to cover. So join us on Substack to look at all the granular details of this fight, where we draw arrows and other stuff on the screen. We'll talk about the mechanics, some of the setups, all the cool stuff that's there. You could actually find it on the paid portion of our Substack, which you could find under our names.
Yeah, subscribe to Substack if you want Ghost's great content. Subscribe to our YouTubes as well.
Thank you, guys.